Hello, Jackie. Every time I look out of the window, I see another London. Every time I look behind, I see more shadows. They're waiting for me. Or am I waiting for them? I keep thinking, when did this story start? I don't think it started when I came to London. I don't think it even started when Jonathan came to London. I think it started long before, a long time ago. Let's see if I can remember. I think I was about 10 years old, so Jonathan would have been 12. We'd gone to a posh hotel for Christmas. My mother had complained all the previous year about the work she did for Christmas and how it was all ruined for her because she spent the entire time in the kitchen cooking. So this year my father said we'd go somewhere nice and other people would do the work. She still complained, by the way. No matter what we did, it was wrong. I think complaining was what she enjoyed most. So we went to this big hotel in the middle of nowhere. We drove there a few nights before, and it was in the middle of the countryside. It was an old manor house that had been converted, and we were very lucky to get a room. Lots of people went there for Christmas. It was a fascinating place. I'd never been anywhere like it. All old panelling and warrens of rooms and plumbing that made funny noises in the night. When we checked in, the nice man behind the reception desk told Jonathan and me that the hotel was haunted by a grey lady, and if we saw her, we were to be sure we bowed in respect. Just a story, really. A good old hotel has to have a good old ghost, and grey ladies are very respectable. Jonathan and I immediately wanted to rush off and look for her. The hotel was full of children running about and playing in the common rooms. It was a friendly place. But my parents said no. We had to sit with them. Those other children were badly behaved, and we weren't to be like them. And what were their parents thinking of, letting them behave like that? What if they broke something or spilled something? And we weren't allowed to read either. It was rude to read when sitting for other people. So we just sat there, drinking lukewarm tea and listening to my parents talk about people we didn't know and they didn't like. They didn't talk to us. If we said anything, they just looked at us and told us we were too young to understand. I'm not quite sure why my parents adopted us. They didn't really seem to know what to do with children. Anyway, Christmas Eve came along and the man in the hotel told my mother it was traditional for the children to come and join the big party. Oh, well, if it's traditional, she said. Oh, how she loved tradition. Sometimes it was as if she didn't quite know how to behave, so she looked at everyone else and they did the most inoffensive, unnoticeable thing she could. When out in public, her favourite thing was to sit in a corner quietly, watching everyone else with disapproval for so openly having fun. But if something was traditional, she allowed it. So this time we could escape. The party was held in one of the big rooms. All that wood panelling and books around the walls and an actual real fire. There were piles of cakes and mince pies and something hot and sweet to drink, and we all played games together, and it was just like those stories I'd read. I was so happy I almost cried. It felt like Christmas is supposed to. It was like something out of Box of Delights, which we'd read that year. And secretly, I hoped a Punch and Judy man would turn up and give us a magical box. Instead, we got ghost stories. A man sat at the front and told us tales of headless horsemen and Anne Boleyn's coach and the creepy lift attendant in the coffin. They were good stories, told well. We listened breathlessly. It was scary, but a good scary. Like they were out there, but we were here. Warm and safe, and nothing could get to us. Jonathan held my hand very tight, I remember, and whispered in my ear that it was all right. He would look after me. so I listened well to my first ever ghost stories, and I was so happy. It was odd, now I remember it. It was like we weren't the only ones listening. Once I glanced across the room and saw the children in the firelight, and then looked in the corner, dark and shadowed. It felt like they listened too. The shadows listened. Perhaps they learned. Because once we had the stories, someone suggested we play hide and seek. That was when it happened. There's a version of hide and seek where, when you find the person, you don't shout out, you join them in their hiding place. I'm fairly sure it was invented as a reason for teenage couples to squeeze together in wardrobes. I did have a little crush on a girl there. Beautiful long golden hair that caught the light. Her name was Sarah. So when we went to play, I went to find her. And as I'm very good at hide and seek, I did. And we lay under the bed and talked together for hours. It felt like hours. It was probably only 10 minutes. Because just when we were beginning to wonder where everyone else was, someone called out that the game was over. Everyone had been found. And we looked at each other because we hadn't been found. We went out through the corridor and down the stairs and into the hall and said, "What about us?" But I saw you, Rory said, puzzled. "Sarah, I saw you with me in the wardrobe. I saw your hair." Sarah turned to me and shrugged. "Maybe it was a ghost," one kid said as a joke, and everyone laughed. "Trick of the light," Jonathan suggested, and I agreed. It was dark and late, and we were overtired. It was a bit odd, but none of us were going to admit to being a little bit scared. It was fine to be scared by a story, but you can't be scared by real life. That's for babies. But the adults were a bit worried. I think more by the fact they missed us than ghost stories. So when we played the game again, this time we had to come back to the hall when found. I went up to the same room and hid under the same bed, hoping Sarah would come back. She didn't. I saw someone else though. After a while I got bored and went out to walk around the corridors, hoping to get caught so I could go back to the nice warm room. That's when I saw her. She looked as if she was made of moonlight. Barely a shadow, just a suggestion of grey. A breath in the air she passed me by, a sudden scent of violets. I wasn't scared. I made a curtsy, as low as I could go, as she walked past me, remembering what the nice man behind the desk had told me. I felt her sorrow, felt her sadness and loneliness. This was a memory, I realised. The house remembering when she had walked up and down this corridor in life. I wasn't scared. Not then. I considered myself found then and walked off down the hall. Except it didn't look like I remembered anymore. Where there had been electric lights, there were candles. The carpeting had been replaced by matting. I wasn't worried. It was a big hotel, and I was a little lost, that's all. This was just a bit I hadn't seen before. I wasn't alone. I knew the other children were all around me. I could hear laughter. I could hear children laughing. I could hear voices behind the doors. I could hear them running behind me. I could feel one little thing slip her hand in mine. I turned to reassure her. There was no one there. I could feel the bones of her hand wrapped firmly around my fingers, but no one was there. I tried to pull away, but she gripped me even tighter, and I felt another hand grasp my shoulder, and still they giggled. It gave to them. I could feel the skirts brush past my knees. I could feel their foot brush mine, and I felt them push closer to me, all around me, chattering and giggling and whispering, close to me, too close, closer and closer, until I couldn't breathe. Then one whispered in my ear, "You're one of us." I pulled away and ran down that unfamiliar corridor, looking for the hall, the other children, some affirmation that I was alive and real. All around me were shadows, watching me, waiting to pounce, and they felt thick and real and alive. I ran to a window and pounded on it, seeing the thick snow outside, snow that must have been falling for days and yet hadn't been there an hour earlier. I could feel them reach out for me. I felt them run their fingers through my hair, pull at my dress, tug at my arm. Then I saw a flash of golden light. "Sarah!" I called. I turned to see her in front of me, haloed in the light from the door, the electric light. The hands let go. Sarah looked right at me, directly into my eyes, and then called out, "No one up here." She left, and the corridor was back where it was. Carpets and electricity and reality. I chased after her, meaning to tell her off for calling me no one. I reached out and grasped her hand. She frowned and looked at me, but not at me. Through me. She pulled away, but I held on tighter. She screamed. Rory came running in and she said, "Something's got hold of my hand." And Rory said, "There's no one there. You're imagining things, Sarah." "I'm not. Come and feel." He reached out and I felt his hand touch mine. A cold electric shock through me. And he said, "There's nothing there." And then Sarah's hand slipped through mine as if I was nothing but shadows. I followed them downstairs, pleading all the while for them to see me and notice me and talk to me, but they paid no attention. It was a game, I was sure. The kind of stupid, cruel game children play with those they instinctively know don't fit in. Sarah kept glancing over her shoulder, but I couldn't get her to look at me. When we reached the hall, the children looked worried and scared, and one of the grown-ups was saying to the other, "Maybe we shouldn't have told the ghost stories tonight." The children were chattering, excited and scared, telling tales of a night of noises. Groans in the woodwork, and knocking on the doors, and giggling in the corridors, talking in the rooms, and muttering in the shadows, and scratching across the windows as if something wanted to be let in. "Is everyone here?" one of the grown-ups asked. "Jonathan, where's your sister?" "What sister?" he replied. The adult looked puzzled for a moment, and then his brow cleared. "My mistake. I don't know why I thought you had a sister." I pulled at Jonathan's sleeve, begging him to see me, to notice me, but he just brushed me off with a puzzled look, not sure what had hold of him. I ran around the room, trying to get them to pay attention to me, but no one did. I turned and saw them in the shadows. Children. 12 children. All wearing different styles of clothing. All very different. All looking at me. Right at me. They saw me. They noticed me. One of them stepped forward and said, without a trace of kindness, "Sooner or later you'll be with us. It's where you ought to be." I ran. I ran through that hotel. I knocked over trays and tore women's dresses and spilled drinks and ran through a crowded room, and no one saw me. Not a soul. I ran until I reached my parents' room. I flung open the door and stood in front of them where they sat by the fire, not saying a word to each other. "Can you see me?" I demanded. They looked up so slowly, achingly slowly. They turned to me and for a moment looked right through me. And then their eyes focused. "Of course we can see you, Fiona. Don't be silly." "No one could see me at the party." "What party? You've been sat here all night," my mother said, gesturing to a chair at the back of the room. I walked to it. My imprint was still on the seat, still warm from my flesh. The cup of tea by the table was only lukewarm. I sat down. I sat in my space, where I was supposed to be, where I had been all evening. When Jonathan came back, I asked him about the party. "Remember, I was there," I silently begged. "Tell me what I saw was real. Tell me there was a girl with golden hair, and games, and ghost stories." "Very dull," he said. "Just watch TV, really. You were right not to go." I asked my mother about that night, years later. She denied it all. She denied we'd even gone to a hotel for Christmas. The only other thing I can remember is, 2 days after that, you turned up, Aunt Jackie. We'd never seen you before, but here you were, dripping wet after being caught in a thunderstorm. You looked at me, really looked at me, and put your hand under my chin and tilted my face up to see you. Then you said, "What an interesting voice you have, my dear." I hadn't even spoken to you. So that's the story, Aunt Jackie. I hope your computer caught it all. I've been sitting here, watching the shadows around me, and I have questions. At first, I thought I would ask if I was real. But I am real. I see the world around me, I touch it, I hear it, so if I exist, are you real, Aunt Jackie? Because since that night, I've never seen you. I get phone calls and letters, but never see you. Are you real, Aunt Jackie? You see, I remember you telling me stories, but I also remember hearing stories that night. And those times you talked to me, we were in a room with a blazing open fire and snow outside and books on all the walls. And now I know it's the same room for my party, the party that never happened. But then there's Jonathan. My brother. I love my brother. He was my only ally, my only friend. I would do anything. I would die for him. Is he real, Aunt Jackie? Did Jonathan ever exist? I don't know what's real and what's not. But please tell me Jonathan was real. Please. Please, Jackie, tell me he's real. Please. That was part 4 of London Shadows, a Rue Papers story. Written, created, and performed by Emma Butler. Part 5, the last part, will arrive tomorrow. And remember, some stories should not be read. Some stories should not be listened to. But you're listening anyway, aren't you?